Well, today I'm worrying about this last part underneath. Let's see. It's probably a little dark. That is the front of the lead keel. And if you watched the episode when we bolted it up, you'll notice that there was a gap in there that I filled in, and my dog jumped in the way. Speedy, go lay down. That's a good girl. Go lay down. All right. Okay, so here's what we're looking at. I had to put a little piece of Douglas fir in there because there was a gap. So as a result, I've got about 2 inches there, maybe 2.5 inches, that I now need to make another forward deadwood piece to come up along the oak keel. I'm sorry the light's not good, but we're clear down here underneath the boat. So let me show you. I'm going to stop the camera and hook up this little contraption that I've got for figuring out how to make a piece to fit under here. Okay, so what I've done is I just took a piece of thin plywood and clamped it onto the oak keel, and strangely it looks like there's a lot of curve there, but there really isn't at that point. It's relatively flat. So now I've taken a pencil, not that line you see there, but on the other side, and I'll go around there. Hang on. Okay, so I took and drew some pencil lines on this piece of plywood. You're not going to be able to see this, but I just drew a line right along the edge of the oak keel on that piece of plywood, and then I'll take it off of here and we can see what I've done. So I know exactly how deep it needs to be up at the front, and then I'm just going to draw a fair curve on the bottom of this to bring it up here to the front, and then we'll make a piece of deadwood to go in there. Okay, so this is the piece of plywood that I had down clamped, and I had it clamped up on this end up here, and then this line just represents the bottom of the oak keel. So I know that whatever deadwood I make needs to have that shape on one edge, which would be the upper edge. And then this line back here represents the angle of, like, okay, there's a little bit of Douglas fir up here and then the lead keel down here. And actually this little tiny mark here is the actual true depth from here to here. So all I'm going to do now is just draw a line that's a fair line that comes up here and just slowly curves up until we get up to there, and we'll make a piece of deadwood. Anyway, we'll try to put that together and piece something together and see if we can glue it up under there and see how it looks. I was way more concerned about this because I thought that curve was way more abrupt, but it's not. I think this is going to be relatively easy. Alright, we'll see how it comes out. Okay, so this is the shape I came out with. That part back here at the back would be the angle that matches up against the lead and the Douglas fir that's in there now. This would be representing the edge along the oak keel, and then I'm just running a fair line here to smooth it out. So it's really not that big of a piece. The only thing about it is that it needs to be about 3 3/4 inches wide. So I've already cut up some white oak, and I've decided I'm just going to go completely with white oak. There's no sense putting any Douglas fir in there. I've got the oak and I'll just use it. So now I've got these pieces here all cut out, and those are all just a shade better than 3 3/4 wide. And I'm going to glue these up. We'll epoxy these. There's some rough edges here, so I'm not too worried about the epoxy not sticking on white oak. It's not real smooth. So I think that we can get some mechanical advantage. And I may actually run a couple of dowels in through here and pour some epoxy in there just to make sure that we get good glue up. Now, what it'll look like then is, stand all these up. I got a little pencil mark on there that shows me right where those need to go. Right over to there and down to there. Then I can lay this dude on here once I get these glued up. And so you can see that now I'll be able to just take a pencil and trace all that on there. And this whole thing works out, well, if I'd come all the way to here, we'd be about 24 inches. So that's a long enough distance for me for that to look, I think, fairly smooth and fair coming up from that spot underneath there. The plan calls for having to do this anyway. I just had that extra little gap in there when I bolted up the lead of about a half inch that I had to fill in with Douglas fir in between the oak keel and the lead. So it made me think that this was going to be a much wider, thicker piece, and it's going to be pretty thick, but certainly nothing like what's been keeping me awake at night. So anyway, once I get those glued up, we'll draw this on there, and then we'll just take the whole thing over the bandsaw and cut it out. Now, the other part of this is that, yes, back here, it'll be 3 3/4 wide, but as it comes forward, this will get narrowed. But I'm not going to cut out the narrowing part of this until after I get this shape on here. I learned my lesson on the rear deadwood by trying to cut the width down first. That's a bad idea. It'll go through the bandsaw a lot easier if it's just one 3 3/4 inch dimension. Okay, more pictures later. Okay, I'm using this 7/16 spade bit, and I've drilled 3 holes. Now you can see I've already got a piece of dowel rod sticking down in there, and that was mostly just to hold that. And then I've got other holes here, and I got it clamped so it wouldn't move on me. Let's see if I can turn this over. I drilled until the pointy end of you can just barely see that mark right there. That's from the end of the bit. Once I got down there, there's another one right there. I don't know if you can see it. Anyway, so I know that my dowels are going to go in there, and I'm just going to fill those full of epoxy and clamp all this up and glue it up, and then we'll have our makings for this forward deadwood. So we glued this up with thickened epoxy last night, and so it's been 24 hours, had it all clamped and the dowel rods in there. It all set up pretty good. Didn't have a ton of squeeze out. I'm just going to saw off these ends of the dowel rod and take the plane and clean off the excess epoxy on the sides. Lay the pattern on here, draw it out, and then take it over to the bandsaw and carefully cut the whole thing out. This time lapse is really sped up. This took 10 minutes or better to carefully cut this out, but it went real well. Things went well on the bandsaw. I know it's time-lapse photography. It looks like it went fast, but that was probably close to 10 minutes of wondering if I was going to break the bandsaw blade, but we didn't. And that's probably about as much as that bandsaw can take. But anyway, we got it in there. It fits very nicely. I've just kind of got it propped up in there with a couple of little sticks, and I'm still going to need to take a little bit off of the front end there. Right here, it's a little bit thick, and it needs to come off right there. You can even still see my line, what I drew here. So it wasn't supposed to come up this far, but I think I'm just going to take a plane and take that down until it's just a feather. And then it's too wide up here because the keel gets narrower. It gets narrower here. It's only maybe 1.5 inches wide, and this is still 3 3/4 or so. So you can see on both sides there, it's sticking out. So we're just going to take the pencil here and just draw right along there on both sides, and then we'll just take over and cut that off. And that's going to leave me with a lot less to feather up here. I got to be careful about that I don't get too much off. But anyway,
fit in there pretty good.
Thanks for watching. Remember to hit the like button and/or subscribe. And look for Jenkins Boat Works on Facebook too. See you next time.